My name is Robbie Morris. I'm a solution specialist with MyQ. We host this webinar series second Friday of every month, 11 a.m. Eastern. We want to share our insights, build our partnerships with you, support your success. That's the whole theme behind these. Today, I am joined by Mr. Robert Shibata from rfIDEAS. I'm going to turn it over to him in just a minute. He's going to be driving our presentation. But before we get into that, just a few reminders about the presentation today. If you have a question, please try and put it in the Q&A window. That helps both of us be able to track these, keep up with them. If we have to do a follow-up with you, it's easy that way. If they go into the chat window, they kind of get lost, but we'll try and check them there as well. The format for today, once I turn it over to Robert, he's going to go through a quick presentation about rfIDEAS, and he and I will, I may interject along the way with some thoughts in relation to MyQ and partnership with rfIDEAS. At the end of that, I'm going to do a quick demo featuring card reader technology and MyQ, how they're utilized together. We're going to do a quick quiz. We always do that, a little review quiz. We've got 4 questions that'll be presented to you. For the folks participating, the top 3 respondents to the quiz, MyQ will make a donation to a charity of your choice. So we'll be following up with you after the presentation to do those, and then we'll go into the Q&A session. So all in all, we're going to try and have you in and out in maybe 30 minutes or so today, but we'll be flexible on that and do our best. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Robert Shibata from rfIDEAS. Thank you for joining me today. The show is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you. Let me go ahead and get my presentation up and running here. I can get it working here. Excuse me. Okay. Great. Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate the introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Robert Shibata. I'm with rfIDEAS. I'm basically responsible for the channel having to do with print and print management. So it's my pleasure to be here today and kind of kick off our partnership with MyQ. And really, just a couple real brief words on myself is that, my background really is in software, primarily print management, and working with software and solutions with OEMs. So I've got quite a number of years background doing that. And just to kind of kick this off, really for today's session, from my perspective, is that, if you guys can walk away with really 2 things. One is knowing who to contact if your customers or you guys have questions regarding authentication. And then obviously that would be either Robbie or myself. And then really to give you some insight on how to ask qualifying questions and really kind of dig into some of your customers' needs regarding security. And hopefully there's some interest there. And at that point, you can go ahead and either bring Robbie or myself in. So those are probably the 2 key things we're thinking about, or at least I'm thinking about as an objective for today's session. So those of you who are not familiar with rfIDEAS is that we have technology that's been around for about 30 years, really around the topic of authentication. So as you're seeing this image here, basically, a lot of you know as you walk up to an MFP with the badge, you authenticate yourself, and then you could go ahead and release your print jobs, otherwise known as secure release, right? So here's what we're going to be talking about today. Those of you who are not familiar with rfIDEAS, I wanted to give a quick slide of introduction to the company, and then talk a little bit about customers' pain points, mostly around security. And then, of course, we wanted to introduce you to some of our products. Obviously, we have a very large portfolio, but some of the key products that you all or your customers may be interested in from a secure release perspective, kind of focusing in on that today. And then there's a lot of growth in mobile authentication. So we wanted to talk about that, a couple slides to kind of discuss an overview and kind of what's happening in that part of the industry. And then I'll turn it back over to Robbie, as he mentioned, for the demo. So real quickly, rfIDEAS, we've been around, as I mentioned, for 30 years. And I've been with the company for almost 6 months now. And when I joined the company, I really wasn't aware the company, rfIDEAS is that old. So really, if you think about it, from a tech perspective, we're pretty much the same age as like Amazon, for that, 30 years in the tech industry is a fairly long time. So we're very well established. We have a really good presence and brand recognition, especially with enterprise. The number there with Fortune 100, we have like a 90% install at some point, and very well known. We just did a survey, and the numbers coming back were surprisingly well in terms of like most IT professionals are aware of rfIDEAS. So feel confident in recommending our products. We are a global company. We have offices in UK as well as Asia, and we support countries throughout the world. It's like 40 and counting. It's probably closer to 50 now. As far as the credentials, as you can imagine, if you look at a data sheet for any particular reader, we usually list out the types of credentials we support, like prox cards, HID prox, iClass readers and things, iClass cards. And right now, it's really over 100 plus and growing. So it's kind of a moving target there, but it's a very big number. And then as far as the form factors, it's not necessarily one size fits all. We have very small readers and some larger desktop ones. So we've got like 10 plus form factors that we support currently. And believe it or not, we actually have over 5 million readers installed globally. And that number is growing, annually, as you can imagine. That's kind of the quick highlights there. So you say, okay, this is great. You guys have been around for a while. Who do you sell to? Who's our customers? So it's pretty ubiquitous across the board, but I kind of selected out some of the key ones we work with on a daily basis. Healthcare is a big one. As you can imagine, authentication and healthcare is very important. We need to know like who a particular doctor is, who a particular nurse is, who is recommending or prescripting, some kind of drugs, whether it's in a hospital or a pharmacy. So there's a lot of tracking involved, with HIPAA and things like that within healthcare. It's really a growing market. I think you'll see even throughout the pandemic, healthcare continues to be a very strong market for us and hopefully for you. Manufacturing, as you can imagine, within the assembly lines, most of the equipment these days is automated, so it's all digital. It's a digital workflow. So we're seeing a lot of needs for manufacturing customers wanting to have their workers authenticate at their devices, whether it's on the assembly line floor or in a more of a traditional work group type environment. But that is a really growing market for us. And as you're having discussions with customers, please bring that up in terms of, are you looking to authenticate your workers on the assembly lines? And I think you'll find some positive affirmations there on that. Skipping over to Gov Ed, we are very strong in education. As you can imagine, most schools, higher education, colleges, universities and such, most of the students have some type of badge, whether there's a barcode on it or possibly a mag stripe or a prox type card. And I think you'll see there's a growing need or desire for the campuses to support mobile devices for authentication. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then lastly, we've seen a lot of pickup with events and hospitality. So for example, if you go to a large trade show, there might be different tiers within that particular offering, maybe a platinum level that you have access to everything, a gold, maybe you only have access to the showroom floor. So the cards or even mobile devices can be used to provide levels of security or access control within a particular event or hospitality. If you think about it, if you go to Marriott and you're a platinum level, I think that's what their highest level is, you have access to particular rooms. So maybe your room key would give you access to a particular room or part of the hotel itself. And I was going to ask Robbie, did you want to interject and maybe have some use cases? Yeah.
I was going to jump in right there. So a good segue for both of us. As it relates to MyQ and in the print output or print management world, some of the use cases I see here where our two companies have symbiosity, healthcare, very obvious one there with patient confidentiality, HIPAA guidelines, You can't print a document and that document be laying in a output tray of a device in a public area. If you or I as citizens walk by and see that, there's a HIPAA violation of personal information. So healthcare using print and follow, where nurses, doctors, those individuals walk up, swipe a badge at a device, and then they can release their jobs. I see that very often. Government education as well, especially the education. You mentioned mobile authentication, and I hope you're going to get to that a little bit more detail. I just got an RFP for a state university, several hundred devices, and one of the requirements of that RFP is using mobile credentials to authenticate. So they're even moving away from the old physical props card, and they're wanting everyone to use their mobile device for those authentication methods. So several tie-ins there, but certainly I'm interested in hearing more about the mobile authentication when you get to that part.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Yeah, that's kind of a growing, how do you say, that's probably the fastest growing market for us right now is mobile. And we're starting to get more and more interest, whether it's an RFP or just general inquiries coming in. Let me switch to the next slide here. So I know a lot of you in your discussions with companies, usually one of your entry points is IT. And most IT professionals are very interested in security. So our solutions help enhance security. I think most of you are familiar with the term KBA, which is a knowledge-based authentication, and that's like a username, password, or a PIN code. They're very, very vulnerable, and I think you'll see most of the bad guys or bad characters, so to speak, are using that method to gain entry to a corporate IT network. So I just put some numbers in there in terms of like ransomware and things like that. Obviously, it's very expensive. I was talking with a reseller down here. I'm in Southern California, and there was one that had a small business. It's like a medium business with maybe like 25 employees. They had a ransomware issue pop up, and the bad guys, so to speak, were looking for about like 50 grand to release their network. So it really doesn't matter the size of the organization. It could be small to obviously enterprise, but it's a continuing, and I should say growing concern for IT professionals. The second point there is that the whole thing around passwords specifically are expensive to maintain. On the average, it costs about $70 to reset a password. Basically, the user calls into the help desk, hey, I forgot my password, can you reset it? And for a large company, I saw some numbers, like it's like millions of dollars per year. I think for a large enterprise, I saw numbers like $50 million or something like that, outrageous amount of money, if you can imagine. So from a cost perspective, getting away from KBA is a good thing. And then the last point here is using cards and mobile credentials is really a way to help implement security from an MFA perspective. You can use a card with a username, password, and the vulnerability factor really decreases considerably. There's also different types of authentication like facial recognition and stuff like that's available. But most companies, especially in enterprise, have some type of ID card. So trying to leverage that and going forward with mobile credentials, that's another way to easily implement MFA. And as Robbie mentioned, it's very much and very easy to support within MyQ. And that's just lastly, really the last point there is really about audit logs and things like that. So obviously the cards ourselves, or excuse me, the readers don't really do MFA, but through like a software like MyQ, you can go ahead and have those audit logs in case there are issues, whether it's for HIPAA compliance or within the financial industry. So kind of switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk just about kind of introduce some of our products if you haven't seen them. These are 4 offerings we have. The left 2, which is the Wave ID Plus Mini, and then the Plus SP are probably the 2 most popular. Both of those offer a USB-A connectivity. So as you know, most of the MFPs these days still are offering the larger USB port. And And then both of the products do support what we call dual frequency. So it supports the traditional HID procs, as well as things like HID I-class, which is the higher frequency. The Mini is great because it's a little smaller. It's one of the smaller readers out there in the market. And then really the Plus SP, the differentiator there is it has a SIM slot. So if there's a particular requirement from an authentication perspective, the credential can be stored on that SIM card and basically added to the device. So it's very flexible. And because of that, it's very popular. On the right side here, we have the Wave ID Mobile. This is our mobile authenticator. So it supports Bluetooth, NFC, as well as FIDO, FIDO2. There are different variations. I kind of put up here in the upper right some of the model numbers that are out there for mobile. Depending on what the customer's requirements are, there may be a different version of that. We do support NFC as well as different flavors of Bluetooth. And I'll get to a little more detail on what those are in a minute. And then lastly, the bottom right, we have the FIDO2. FIDO is becoming much more of a requirement for authentication, primarily with banks and other FIs. So they are looking for that so-called standard for authentication. And so we came up with the solution called Converge ID. Basically allows you to turn your badge into a FIDO credential. And it can be used, for that higher security, mostly for banking. It's kind of moving into other areas, but I think that's kind of where the sweet spot is right now. So if you hear the word FIDO, and if you guys do want some additional information on that, we have some on our website. It's like some white papers and things like that. Feel free to give us a ring and we can talk about it. I kind of came from that industry where we supported FIDO2, and we're pretty successful in offering that type of solution. So Robbie's favorite topic, the mobile side. So we call it contactless authentication. And I just put some bullet points here in terms of what's happening with this in terms of why the growth. So we're really finding that businesses in general are more open to this now. I think if you go back about 5 years ago, there was a lot of hesitancy, but today in today's market, there's a growing need or requirement to support it. And what's kind of fueling that, I guess you could say, is the fact that most people have a smartphone, especially here in the United States. So it's really easy to leverage that technology, primarily whether it's NFC or Bluetooth. And really, this number here, that 44% as far as workers saying that mobile access is acceptable and they'll support it, is a lot of it that's coming due to the fact of the pandemic or post-pandemic, where people are maybe a little bit paranoid in terms of like touching things and things of that nature. So if people can just use their phones for authentication, it's kind of a good thing. So they feel safer. So as far as the use cases, I think you'll see education, some FIs. There's a lot of need for this for controlling like guests coming into facilities. Could be used for access control across the board. So I would say as you're having discussions with customers, maybe ask them, are you guys using a badge? If not, are you thinking about, or would it be acceptable to have some extra security around the use of mobile credentials? So we do offer quite a few solutions in that area. So I just put up a quick listing of some of the providers that we support from the mobile credential perspective. We have partnerships with like Wave ID. We support HID Mobile Access, which is one of the most popular ones out there. We support Orange Pack. On the educational side, there's Seaboard and Transact. So if you think about the one card system in a university, they are kind of moving to supporting mobile devices. So both those one card providers work with us to supported for their student body. And then more recently, we have some new offerings coming out with wavelengths. So if you all are interested in possibly selling mobile credentials, maybe let us know, and we can have a discussion around that in terms of how you can help enable your customers with kind of an end-to-end solution with the mobile credential, obviously the reader, and MyQ on the back end to kind of like control that. So that's kind of the high level there. And just really quickly, for those of you who are a little more technical, we do have some tools. Just want to make sure you guys are aware. So this is a card analyzer tool. Basically allows you to tap the badge on that reader there, and basically it'll read back what's on that card. So it's really good to verify which reader is going to be supported for that particular card type that your customer has. So it's very, very flexible, and I would just say very low cost, accessible for you and your tech staff. And lastly, there are a bunch of different types of secure credentials out there. In those cases, the reader would need to be programmed to support that. I would say 80–90% of the time it's not really necessary, but in those cases where the customer has a higher level of security around their badges, we can use this utility to go ahead and program that reader to support it. So this is available. It's a free utility. I have the URL listed there. If you go to our website under tools, you can download this. And here again, this is probably a little more technical than you guys want, but just so you're aware. I would mention that as again, 80% of the times it's probably not necessary, but there will be some cases where the customer's requirements, kind of demand that you configure it. And then
Robert, I'm gonna interrupt you one more time because
sure.
I actually fell into that 10 to 20% where it was necessary. I had a customer I was working with at one point in time, and their particular card, it had quite a long syntax or string embedded in that card, and we didn't need the whole thing. We just needed 5 characters out of that entire string. So using the configuration utility, we were actually able to program the RFID card reader so that it basically took the left and right off of that string and gave us the 5 characters that we needed for our purposes. So that's just kind of a use case from a personal experience of that 10 to 20% where I needed it that one time. Like you said, most of the time you don't really need it, but having a free utility available that's able to reprogram that card reader kind of on the fly, very handy utility to have.
Yeah, that's a good example, Robbie. Yeah, I think, just adding in another example I've seen is that, there are a lot of customers that, maybe there's a merger acquisition. So, maybe they had a, HID procs originally, and they're adding in, like an iClass type card with the acquisition. So they're actually supporting 2 different types of cards. So in that type of case, we'd have to reprogram the readers, and that's cases where this utility would come in handy. I would mention too is that we do have what's called a config card coming soon. Config card is basically the ability to program a MasterCard, for lack of another term, and then you can use that MasterCard to go around and program the readers. Basically, just flash that card on different readers within facilities, and it would automatically reprogram those devices. So that's coming soon.
That's real nice. If a card reader is already embedded in a device, you don't have to pull the cover off and disconnect it and do all that, right? I mean, you just tap the card and it reprograms itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely an ease of use thing, especially in facilities where maybe they're kind of spread out. If you think about it, maybe like a university or an enterprise where they've got multiple floors or multiple buildings and stuff like that. So it's an easy way just to, for an IT professional or even anybody for that matter, just to walk through and flash that card on each MFP, or excuse me, each reader on an MFP. And it's as simple as that. So it's
they just need to wear their comfortable shoes that day, right?
Oh yeah, especially in a big facility. I was at a big university down here in Southern California the other day, and literally you could spend, I don't know, maybe half an hour walking from one side of the campus to the next. So anyways, so that's pretty much my session. I'll turn it back over to Robbie. I think you had a little demo that you wanted to show, right?
I do, and just leave that slide up for just a. Oh, that's okay. That's not. I was going to let folks see that while I was speaking. So in terms of MyQ and rfIDEAS, obviously we have a strategic partnership together. So for our partners on this call, we're going to be sending some follow-up information afterwards. So many of you know we have an indirect and direct type channel where partners can acquire services from MyQ and the licensing, and rfIDEAS obviously being part of our portfolio as well. So when you come to us with MyQ opportunities, we're also interested in being able to provide the card readers necessary for the opportunities you may have with your customers. Let me shift my screens around here a little bit. Let me share mine again. So I'm going to kind of do two demonstrations for you folks real quick. Should take maybe just 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm in the MyQ administration interface right now, and I'm going to look at my particular username. So we see my information here, and we see I don't have a card associated with my account right now. I want you to see I'm not doing any smoke and mirrors, and there's no sleight of hand. I want you to see I'm doing all this in real time for you. So there is no card associated with my account. We can all agree to that. I do have a PIN number, though. When we set up configuration profiles for MyQ devices, you'll see I've got a profile here called Office Copiers, and this is going to apply to my Canon, Epson, Kyocera, Ricoh, and Toshiba devices that I may have in an environment. So with a login method, we can have simple, which means you can log in with a PIN or with a card, or I always say if you hate your users, you can make them log in with a username and password. Obviously, I don't have that turned on. I'm going to show you first just a simple login with a PIN, and then auto-registering or self-registering this card to a user account. And then I'm going to transition over and do ID and card. Robert mentioned multi-factor authentication. So that's what we call multi-factor authentication, or two-factor inside of MyQ is ID card and PIN. So first, I'm going to come to my device. It is locked. It is secure. I have my badge in my hand, but if I tap it to the device, there's a beep. It's going to tell me this card is not registered to anyone. Logging in failed, access denied. So if I know my PIN number, which MyQ can generate those and email them to the users. So we put in the email, hey, walk up, type in your PIN number. You're going to see an icon on the screen that says tap to register ID card. This can be labeled anything we want to label it. Place your card to the reader. There's another beep. Now it tells me ID card registration successful. I can now use this badge to walk to any device using MyQ, assuming a card reader is attached to the device, and log in, authenticate that way. I'm going to log out real quick. And I want you to pay attention to the login screen. This is going to change. So let me come back to my MyQ settings. I'm going to change it from simple authentication to ID and card. So now we're moving into that multi-factor, highly secure environments where they have to present their badge and they have to present their PIN number. So obviously use case here is someone lost their badge, someone picked it up off the floor, but without knowing the secondary credential, they still can't access the devices. Let me save this. It's going to take just a second for my device to reconfigure itself. MyQ is sending this configuration to the device remotely. So there's no going around and cloning devices or having to clone or move settings or change settings at the device. MyQ handles all that remotely. And if I come back to my user account, we will see my badge is now registered to my user account. That was that self-registration process that I went through. Still have my PIN number. So, and look at there. Now the window has changed. The login window says present your card to log in. It's also presenting a QR code. So if I'm using the MyQX mobile app for iPhone or Android, that's another way that I could scan that, but I'm still going to have to provide the second factor authentication as well. So using my badge, I tap a PIN. All right, now I have to type in that second factor of authentication, and I'm authenticated now as that user based on two-factor authentication. So two different views there for you, two different demonstrations. The simple method with a PIN or card, and then multi-factor with PIN and card. All righty. So we're going to move in and we're going to do that quick review quiz. Like I said, there's 4 questions there. Top 3 responders or respondents. MyQ is going to make a charitable donation to an organization of your choice. And then we're going to move into the Q&A. So if you've got some questions, be getting those ready. Let me get the quiz loaded up.